welcome again to the Tales in Tune show. We're very fortunate this week to have a wonderful guest, Catman Bill. Bill, welcome.
Thank you.
And Bill is a wonderful singer-songwriter. He writes topical songs. I think I met Bill maybe 2 years ago on the Zoom open mics during the pandemic, and also up at the Buttonwood Tree, where once a month on Thursdays, there's a live open mic. And that's where I first met Bill. So we're going to chat a little bit with Bill, and then Bill will present some of his wonderful topical songs to you. So Bill, how did you get involved in this music in the first place?
Well, you know, sometimes there are those little moments in time that you know, in a young life that clicks something on. And I don't know if this was that iconic moment, but I always remember it in my old neighborhood when I was growing up in Hartford. Across the street from my little house where I lived in, there lived a couple that were musicians. And I soon found out that there was music coming from their first floor apartment. So I one day walked across the street and sat on their porch and just listened to what was going on inside. Yeah. And I don't know how many times I did that before. They were a couple. One of them, they played typical hootenanny music in the early 60s. One had a stand-up bass, the other guitar. And the woman came out one day and was amazed that I was enjoying listening to them, and she invited me inside with the proviso that I stay silent and not interrupt their rehearsals. I think they were pretty serious musicians. Okay. I often wondered what happened to them because I called them older folks. They were about 18 years old, and I was about 7 or 8 at the time.
Really, that young?
So they could still be around. And so I walked in and I sat on the couch and I watched them perform. And, you know, to this day, I wonder why one of them never brought the guitar over and let me put it in my lap and say, go ahead, touch it, play the strings, because, you know, it's a learning thing. But that was my very first experience with live music. That didn't click automatically, but maybe a few years later, I liked you know, the Beatles. There was the era of the Beatles and so on, and all the folk artists, and I had an original idea to want to learn drums. So my older sister's friend's brother was a member of a rock and roll group, and he was a drummer. So he lent me his snare drum. I had it in my bedroom, and I'd tap it every once in a while. Shortly thereafter, I put a hole in the skin, and I was so embarrassed. I didn't want him to ever call me up to tell me I had to give it back to him. But eventually he called, and I said, "I'm sorry, Dennis, but I put a hole in it." He said, "Don't worry about it."
Good man, good man, good man. Do you remember any of those early songs that you listened to that you like, perhaps, with that group? You said it was the early 60s?
Oh, no, with 63. The group that was performing, I think they might have been doing their own original scores. Okay. But, you know, I kind of came into, I call the golden era of my listening phase the doo-wop and yes. Rock and roll pop from 1958 to 63. Mm-hmm. And I still, you know, and then the British invasion of the Beatles and all the Rolling Stones and groups came in, and then the folk elements of protest.
So when you banged on the drum for a while, and then somehow you managed to get a guitar. How did you get your first guitar? Do you recall? And what was it? What was it, if you remember?
Well, I don't remember what brand, because it was a $9.95 guitar in a local music shop. Yep. And I think I was around either 12 or 13 years old at the time. I believe I was 13. And I had this guitar, and it was the era of the hippie period, and I remembered sanding down the face of it and using glow bright paints to paint a fancy love symbol on it, and I had that for several years. And other contemporaries of mine at the time were doing little church basement open mics, and I was too shy to do that, and my abilities were not that great, but nobody's was that great. I could have indulged.
In those days, do you recall when you first decided to actually write a song, and what inspired you to do that?
Oh yeah, without a doubt. It was 1975. I was, what was I, about 22 years old, and my sister's daughter had recently been born, and I just, it was just a natural for me to pull out paper and pencil and write Talking Lisa Blues. And it was about her birth at the age of 6, crawling across the floor, pulling at her mama's everything, and I finished it, and it's still there. And that
Excellent.
was my very first song. And then I kind of went into a phase of nothing written until for many years later.
And after that, and that's a wonderful story. I recall when I wrote my first song, it was back in 1978. And sort of a little bit about life and being married and working and all of that, you know. It's called One Day. So what got you into, because you write about topical issues, really significant ones. What is it about them that inspires you to pick up that pen and write a song again?
Well, I don't see a whole lot of difference between writing a song and writing an editorial or a commentary, which is what I've always been prone to do, and that has kind of been my companion along with creative writing, because I have a blog now on Substrate, Bill Katz at substrate.com, I think. And I subsequently wrote a book, you know, the protest singers of the '60s, the Bob Dylans, before him, the Woody Guthries. I always like to recite a little story about once running away from home at the tender age of 14 with about 5 other of my companions, and we hitched up to Provincetown. And one night I was walking along the street, and I was looking at this little coffee shop, and there was a person playing inside. So I was just looking, and the street hawker said, "Do you know who's in there?" And I said, "No." He said, "It's Arlo Guthrie." And I said,
wow.
"Oh, who's Arlo Guthrie?" And he said, "Well, he's the son of Woody Guthrie." And I said, "Oh, well, who's Woody Guthrie?" He said, "Come on in." So he let me walk in for free. And I made one big mistake. I saw Arlo up there with, you know, a small bunch of people around him, entertaining. I sat on the back bench, and he talks about a back bench in Alice's restaurant.
Yes.
I should have walked up, because I thought I was in for the show. I was there for a couple of songs, and then I casually looked over at him, the guy that let me in, and he said, "Come here." And I walked over to him. He said, "Well, that's going to be $3.50. I said, "I don't have that kind of money." And I had to leave Arlo Guthrie's
That's a great
pre-Alice's restaurant. He was making his time. Dennis Schubert, the kid that was the brother of my sister's friend, who lent me a snare drum that I accidentally broke. And just last year, I thought of looking him up. Now, it's easier to look up generally it's easier to look up a man, because the name stays, although frequently women keep their maiden name.
Sure.
But so I looked up online, and sure enough, I found him. He was living in Bolton, but just the year before, in 2023, he had passed away, and that certainly prevented me from giving him a call, which I would have done, to say, "Hey, remember me?"
Sure.
So I could apologize for putting a hole in his snare drum. But he remained in a band, a local band, throughout his life, and I guess that's what we do.
So Bill, and this may be not materialized yet in your mind, but is there something that's sort of percolating that you're thinking about writing a song about at the present time, but it's not written yet, but you're thinking, maybe I'll write a song about this, and what might it be?
Oh, I mean, right at this very moment, no and yes.
Okay.
Yes, because I wanted to write another song for a few years. Sometimes they just remain in my recesses. Almost a follow-up to the song about Where the Giants Roam, about elephant poaching. And a few years ago, I read in the New York Times about this security person in South Africa that was slain because he was very effective in fighting the poachers. And the poachers have become organized criminals now. And he was slain in front of his family. And that always, you know, I still have the papers and underlying words and stuff, and I haven't quite put it together. And
so I can see where that kernel of an idea came from, but it's not something that you can rush to the paper with. You're getting a lot of other influences, and as the thoughts come to you, you might jot down little notes, continuing that story. That's what I do when I probably got 15 or 16 different ideas for songs with little partial bits of them written. You know, some of them, maybe I've got all of the lyrics in and the chords, but not in a format that I could, you know, call complete. So at one point in time, you might reach the decision that I'm going to finish this thing. What gives you that motivation?
You know, we call it divine inspiration. And that's all it is. It's that something clicks and you do it. And sometimes it occurs quickly, and sometimes it takes a few years. The song that I wrote about Leonard Peltier, the Native American activist who was falsely imprisoned for over 45 years, 48 years for allegedly shooting 2 FBI agents. That was something that every year I would go back to and think about, and nothing came out. And then in 2022, the lyrics just started coming out, and I wrote them all down, because when that moment happens, you either capture them on paper or you lose them forever.
Yeah, it's a good point. So it's sort of, after all of your deliberations and thinking, it comes out, you write it down, and you wonder where it came from, but there's been a lot of thought and a lot of time spent thinking about the issue. I found that happens to me. Not really often, because a lot of times it's a challenge to put the songs together. But you do write wonderful songs. They're beautifully topical, and like I say, I've known Bill for a couple years now, and he's one of our featured artists at the Deer Lake Music Festival, which this year, by the way, is going to be held on September 20th at Deer Lake Camp Center in Deer Lake Activity Center in Killingworth, Connecticut. And we're looking forward to that too, Bill. But thank you so much for visiting with us, and we're looking forward to hearing your songs.
Thank
you, Bill.
So you were asking me a little time about a while back, what motivates me, and I still don't know, but I know that this song was written on February 29th of 2020. I was already ensconced in my home, not knowing what was going to happen to the world at large, but we were all locked in our apartments and homes and abodes, and I was compelled to write this song, Corona, Pneumonia, and the Boogie Woogie Flu. Corona, pneumonia, and the boogie woogie flu. It's messing with my headgear and I don't know what to do. Send me money, send me face masks, send the oxygen too. It's time for elections and Monday morning blues. The doctor wants to see me to check my temperature. She doesn't want to shake my hands while keeping her secure. My mortician's on the phone with my body measurements. If I don't vote Republican, I won't be heaven sent. pneumonia and the boogie-woogie flu. It's messing with my headgear and I don't know what to do. Send me money, send me face masks, send the oxygen too. It's time for elections and Monday morning blues. The wighead in Washington doesn't even know the time. More fake news on the flat screen on transmission lines. He's even tested positive. He's spreading his disease, sniffling and sneezing and sending out more sleaze. Corona, pneumonia, and the boogie-woogie flu. It's messing with my headgear and I don't know what to do. Send me money, send me face masks, send the oxygen too. It's time for elections and Monday morning blues. The next song I'd like to perform is called Where Will the Giants Roam? It was a collaboration between myself and a songwriter, Alex Forbes of New York. But as an art dealer, back a few years ago, I brought a print to a customer that lived on Fifth Avenue in New York, and to sell. And he walked me around his collection, and at the end, he brought me over to his mantle, and he was very proud to show me a set of huge elephant ivory tusks. And I just went into another dimension, and I grew silent and sad, and I looked at these tusks, and I realized that I was in the presence of evil, total evil, that somebody would be proud to have the slaughtering of elephants to be draping his mantle. And I do remember reaching out and touching the tips of one of the tusks. And I ruminated why I did that on the way back on the Metro North train to Connecticut. And I remember 30 years earlier, 20 years earlier, and being in the emergency side room with my mother, looking down at my recently deceased father, and I was touching his jaw, and my mother asked me, "What are you doing?" And I said, "I don't know." Well, I realized as I came back on the train why I was touching his jaw, and that's the way the living reaches out to the dead, through the touching of a hand or the swaying of a tusk over a recently deceased family member. And this song grew from that moment. There's an elephant loose on Fifth Avenue tonight. I know his spirit's near. You could hear him rumble across the sky. See him in your rearview mirror. Yeah, that's the thunder of his pounding feet, far from his watering hole. 'Cause that's the tusk on your mantelpiece. You carved out part of his soul. You carved out part of his soul. Thought you just had to have it. Well, that's some heavy traffic. When the jungle's gone, where will the giants roam? Money don't last that long, where will the giants roam? When your conscience calls and nobody's home. my street, knocking on your bedroom door, asking about that medicine you need and what kind of fool it's for, and what kind of fool it's for. Thought you just had to have it. Well, that's some heavy traffic. When the jungle's gone, where will the giants roam? Money don't last that long, where will the giants roam? When your conscience calls and nobody's home, where will the giants roam? Thank you. Well, speaking of those little moments in time that click, as an art dealer, I was driving home from Nashville, not for a musical event, but for an art convention. And I didn't sell anything for those 4 days, so I wasn't in the happiest mode. But somewhere along I-81 in Pennsylvania, a line started circling in my head, and it was, there are good people and bad ones wherever you go. Just seems like the bad ones are stealing the show. This was in August of 2019, and it remained in my head for about a half hour until I pulled into a truck stop and wrote it down, because I would have forgotten. And we always know that if you don't grab those lines and lyrics, they do disappear forever. A week later, I had my song, Blue Days. I like the sunshine every day, even like the rains of early May. Cold winds are fine on a winter's day. I want it all to stay this way. One thing I don't like, and you could guess, the ass in the White House making a mess. There are good people and bad ones wherever you go. Just seems like the bad ones are stealing the show. They'll twist and shout, make others scream. Their deeds are causing a horrible swing. I like the sunshine every day, even like the rains of early May. Cold winds are fine on a winter's day. I want it all to stay this way. You've been sold a high-priced bill of goods. He'll turn all your friends into mean, ugly hoods. He'll say he's done nothing wrong at all, then put you in detention halls. One thing I don't like, and you could guess, the ass in the White House making a mess. I like the sunshine every day, even like the rains of early May. Cold winds are fine on a winter's day. I want it all to stay this way. A Trump sandwich is made out of white bread. It's full of bologna and a Russian spread. Day and night, it's what we're fed. He tweets and he feeds as more lay dead. I like the sunshine every day, even like the rains of early May. Cold winds are fine on a winter's day. I want it all to stay this way. I want it all to stay this way. And I just wanted to add to this that that period was my main motivation for writing a song about the monster that's now back in the White House, Donald's Vanity Tantrums. And I write often political songs and satire, and that was the inspiration. So this next song that I'd like to perform is called Mr. President, Please Pardon Leonard Peltier. Leonard was an Indian activist in the A movement in the 60s and 70s, and he was falsely accused of shooting 2 FBI agents on the Pine Ridge Reservation in 1974 or 5. And for years, I had wanted to write about him, but again, it was those things where that divine moment inspiration wasn't happening. So I would put it down and then pick it up later. But in October of 22, the lyrics came out, and in short order, I had my song. And I recorded it, and I sent it to a group that was petitioning for his release, a group down in Rapid City, South Dakota. And they instantly sent me a note back asking if I would perform it at a protest they were having in November. And they were marching across the country. And with an invite like that, I couldn't say no. So that was a long drive back and forth from Washington, from Hartford to Washington. But I went there and I performed my song. And as we know, Joe Biden didn't pardon him, but freed him from imprisonment within hours of his administration. And for that, everyone is eternally grateful. So, Mr. President, please pardon Leonard Peltier. Mr. President, please pardon Leonard Peltier. He spent his life in prison. His trial wasn't fair. Mr. President, pardon Leonard Peltier. In prison like an animal, 45 plus years on the Pine Ridge Reservation in 1975. Protecting his people from the goons and FBI, as many were murdered on the Pine Ridge that year. Mr. President, pardon Leonard Peltier. The trial was a travesty, he didn't have a chance. 2 agents shot dead on the Jumping Bull Ranch. Prosecution gave false testimony of the murder scene. They pinned it on Leonard as in a bad dream. Mr. President, pardon Leonard Peltier. He spent his life in prison. His trial wasn't fair. Mr. President, pardon Leonard Peltier. In prison like an animal, 45 plus years. Myrtle, poor Bear, a girl who testified, lied, said she dated Len, then said he did the crime. Later recanted, confessing her lies. Mr. President, give Leonard back his time. Rubidoux, Butler, and Peltier, all 3 charged with the crime. First 2 found not guilty, neither did no time. So they pinned it all on Leonard, someone had to pay. Mr. President, free Leonard without delay. Leonard ran from the scene, later found up north. They brought him back from Canada, they brought him back by force. They brought him back from Canada to face another judge who wanted someone to convict with a solitary grudge. Mr. President, thank you for releasing Leonard Peltier. He spent his life in prison. His trial wasn't fair. Mr. President, thank you for releasing Len Peltier. In prison like an animal, 45 plus years. Thank you. This next song is titled Broken Roads and Broken Trails, Inauguration Day. And on January 20th of 2020, now such a long time ago, I watched the inauguration on screen and was very happy for the occurrence. It was a rainy and misty day, but at the time that the poet laureate came out to perform her poem, the clouds broke and the sun shined out just for that few moments that she was on stage. And I noted it in the song. And the song and the lyrics are mostly about the person that was in office before him. But it's called Broken Roads and Broken Trails. Nothing more to say. Wrong from the first day. Wrong till the last day, you know the tale. Broken roads and broken trails. He was ushered out, left behind only doubt. Blinds up, the White House disinfected through and through. Sun up and skies are blue. So you walk past trees by the reflecting pool. Listen to the echo of gangs and fools. Wrong till the last day, you know the tale. Broken roads and broken trails. And ye shall know the truth, and the truth will make you free. They told that to me once back in school. Wrong till the last day, you know the tale. Broken roads and broken trails. The next song is called Clean Water, or a modification of that title in Sioux is Minnetonka, or Big Water. It was written in December of 2016, during and after the crisis on the Bismarck, North Dakota, and the Dakota Access Pipeline. And I just felt compelled to write about what was taking place. And here it is. Clean water flowing through their land. Clean water flowing through their land. The pipeline was planned For Bismarck, the dispute there began. Clean water flowing through their land. Dakota Access First Plan, the pipeline crossing the Missouri near Bismarck town. The town said no, don't put it there, dig it further down. Better to put the pipeline near the Sioux. Clean waters flow for me and flows for you. They had stopped the pipeline near Cannonball, North Dakota. Water warriors from many tribal bands. Then friends across the world had joined Lakota. Keep clean waters flowing throughout their land. Clean waters flowing through their land. Clean waters flowing through their land. The pipeline was planned for Bismarck. The dispute there began. Keep clean waters flowing through their land. Clean water. With the first song I wrote in 1975, when my niece was about 6 months old, and I was intrigued by her crawling around, and it's called Talking Lisa Blues. Wake up in the morning with my face all done in red. It seems like I've been loving, Lord, but I only screamed instead. 'Cause right now I'm just 6 months old, atrociously bold, and I can't be sold. And I do not need a doctor to tell me how to grow. I'll guzzle down a bottle and I'll stagger from my bed and crawl across the bedroom floor to pull at my mama's leg. I'll dream about a sailing ship that's only 6 months out, could make a princess flip with 4 and 20 sailors, Lord, commanded by my shout. I'll stagger to the starboard to spy the open sea. Then I'll wake up after midnight in a small crib full of pee. Now I've told you of my sorrows and I've told you of my pain. they'll televise my story as a primetime game. And right now I am leaving to carry on my plight. Take note of one last bargain, Lord, I'll be your baby tonight.